the Stoics. They were around the same time as the Epicureans. It was probably a more popular view. You know, if the Epicureans were sort of hippies, kind of checking out from society, the Stoics were kind of more like central. It's probably the most sort of common view, especially in Rome. Um, probably the Romans weren't that interested in Plato and Aristotle, but they were interested in this kind of, at least in this sort of one version of Stoicism. One interesting feature of Stoicism is that it was adopted by all sorts of different people from different walks of life. So one very notable Stoic was the Emperor Marcus Aurelius. So he was like the richest, most powerful man in the world. And yet he found Stoicism made a lot of sense. And another Stoic who we'll mention is Epictetus, who was a freed slave. So it kind of, Stoicism appealed to a wide range of people. Stoa means a porch where philosophers met. There were lots of, Stoics did lots of different sorts of stuff. They were very interested in logic. When I was a grad student, there was a seminar on Stoic logic. I didn't stick around for that, but it was, I mean, it's a subject of a lot of scholarly research. They try to kind of work out how you tell what the truth is. They have this idea of nature as governed by reason, this kind of idea of logos, which we'll talk about a bit more. And they were very interested in what you have control of versus what you don't have control of. So they have this theory about living according to nature. So their idea of nature is an important one for them. And it's not just atoms. They have this sort of spiritual idea of the world. So there's all sorts of ideas within Stoicism. Some Stoics are highly theoretical. Others are very practical. Since there were lots of different Stoics, they didn't always agree with each other, and they had sort of a variety of views on stuff like sex and love and wealth. Generally, both the Stoics and the Epicureans agreed that a simple life is best. It's an interesting idea that you could have Marcus Aurelius, an emperor, the richest guy in the world, and really he yearned for a simple life. He didn't kind of want to kind of take advantage of all his massive wealth. So the Stoics and the Epicureans agree on what kind of life to live to some extent. They agree that you should be law-abiding and you should kind of have friends, but they have different motivations for their different views. So basically, the Stoics were very strong believers in morality, in virtue. They thought virtue was very important, and it was the sole good. And they didn't think that you should be seeking a life of pleasure, but they did think that a life of virtue would end up being a pleasurable life. Whereas the Epicureans are saying, look, virtue doesn't really mean anything. It's just like, people make this stuff up. But what's important is leading a life of pleasure. But they agree that you should lead a life of contentment and avoid excessive desires for things which aren't natural or necessary. And you should go for a life of inner peace. So the Epicureans wanted to kind of achieve like a static pleasure, free from pain and mental disturbance, whereas the Stoics think that you sort of have to accept that some things are not within your control and leading a simple life, but learning to not care about stuff which is not under your control. Just not worry about that stuff. So we'll look at, first at a little more at Epictetus. He was born in the year 55. So Stoicism had been around quite a long time, but he wrote quite a lot about Stoicism. He influenced Marcus Aurelius. He died, I guess, he was about 80 when he died. So it's amazing. I guess probably the ones who died young we don't hear so much about, but it is interesting that back in these ancient times when most people didn't live that long, a lot of these philosophers lived a long time. He was born in Phrygia, which is in southwestern Turkey. He was a slave, but presumably he was a pretty well-educated slave. His master was Epaphroditus, and his master had also been a slave, and I guess he'd made some money for himself, and so now Epaphroditus had his own slave, so an interesting thing is like Epaphroditus treated Epictetus well and got him to learn with a Stoic teacher. So he was making sure that Epictetus had a good education. So one of the kind of big ideas of Epictetus, which is also important for a lot of other Stoics, is that you have to kind of distinguish between what's up to you and what is not up to you. So Epictetus has this basic idea, which is in some ways quite modern. It's the idea that you can control what's in your mind, but you can't control other people and you can't control other events. So you should just be controlling your own attitudes rather than trying to control other people. He thinks that if you think you can control other people, then that's going to lead you into being unhappy, because you'd be wrong about that. And so you just have to kind of learn to be very calm and unperturbed by what other people do. If other people are rude to you, if other people insult you, if other people steal from you, then you have to learn to control your own reactions to that. Which is easier said than done. Right? There's this idea that you try and train your desires, and you live in a natural way. We'll be talking a little bit more about what counts as a natural way. Certainly, it's going to be leading a simple life, and so you shouldn't be seeking all sorts of fancy stuff, because that's not going to be good for you. So there's a strong sort of overlap with the Epicureans there. And you should not do what's against nature. So there's this idea that the world there's a natural way of doing things. There's a kind of harmony about the world, and you should live along with that harmony. So things like you come into problems when you make a false judgment. So the Epictetus agreed with the Epicureans that death isn't bad. So you should just learn to be kind of calm about possible deaths. So he thinks if you are unhappy, you're the cause of your own unhappiness. You are the one who has control of your own unhappiness, and you shouldn't be kind of proud of your possessions. Rather, you should be so proud about your character. That's the main thing that you have, your virtue. So the Stoics were especially big fans of Socrates. Socrates went around kind of trying to be very rational. He led a fairly simple life. He didn't charge money for teaching. So they took him to be somebody who was seeking virtue, seeking truth, and he led a good life and one which people could be proud of. So for the Stoics, you have to kind of really work to not be bothered about stuff which is not under your control. So you shouldn't be wanting external goods. You shouldn't be wanting a big house. You shouldn't be wanting an expensive car. You shouldn't be wanting lots of jewelry. You shouldn't be wanting a Rolex, because all of that is not natural. You should just go for a simple life. And then you can have much more control over your life. So it's one of the central psychological ideas is mastering your own desires. So in some ways, what the Stoics do is like they take some of the ideas of the Epicureans and they ramp them up. They say you have control over your life. We might wonder like how realistic their ideas are. Obviously, if somebody punches you in the face, you're going to probably feel rage. But I think what the Stoics would say is, yeah, of course you feel rage. That is going to be, it'd be amazing if you could not feel rage then, but then you can control what happens afterwards. You can learn to calm down and not, instead of escalating the situation and becoming more angry, you learn to de-escalate and lead a life which is much more kind of simple and tranquil. So they have this idea of nature as nature being divine. And so there's this word logos. It's to do with logic or the word. It's the whole idea that, so they have this idea that the world itself, the universe, is essentially rational. It's not just that humans are rational, it's that the world is rational. The world kind of makes sense. So if you believe that, you'll understand that nothing is truly bad. Everything makes sense. In some ways, it's quite an optimistic view. Thinks that things which are apparent harms aren't really bad harms. So they have this idea of the world being rational. So the world is material in some ways, but it has two principles. There's a passive principle and an active principle. So matter is inert in some ways, but it can be activated by an active principle, sort of some sort of like intelligent generative force, which acts on matter to give it form, motion, and structure. It seems kind of sort of Aristotelian, but the idea is that physical matter is actually not just passive, it's a combination of the passive and the active. You have the matter and the form, and so the whole world is in some way spiritual. The whole world is some way divine. They don't think of it like some sort of separate God. Like some forms of Christianity, for example, might think of God looking down on humans. And with Plato, we had the world of the forms, totally separate from the physical world. The Stoics think that the physical world is God. Everything is God. They are pantheists. So everything in the world is spiritual. God, or this logos, is not separate from the world, rather it's in everything. It's described as like a fiery breath, or pneuma, and it's in everything. So this kind of view is a sort of surprising view. So they think of the world as deterministic. They believe in fate, but not a kind of random fate. Rather, they think the whole world is rational. So they think that everything that happens for a reason. They also have this idea, which comes up occasionally. They think the world is cyclical. The universe is cyclical, and everything keeps on happening again and again and again. I don't know if they all believe that, but at least some of the Stoics believe that. So this idea of logos is like some kind of idea of cosmic reason that's in everything. It orders all of nature. Everything makes sense. Everything is designed, and it's all for the good. So it is a very optimistic view. So there's that idea of cosmic reason. There's human reason, which kind of is like a sort of trying to capture that cosmic part. And we can only achieve that in a somewhat imperfect way. And then they have the idea of ethical living being virtuous. So they think that humans, if you live according to nature, live in agreement with nature, then you're gonna be part of this rational universe, and there's going to be harmony. So if you like live a virtuous life, then you will kind of be sort of in the right flow with the universe, and everything is going to go well. And if we all kind of behave in a virtuous way, then everything is going to go well. It's a little surprising that we think about how much tumult there was in the Roman times and towards the end of the Roman Empire, but it's an amazingly optimist view. In terms of this virtue, the Stoics believed in 4 cardinal virtues. So that's prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. So we think of those like prudence is like being wise, justice is kind of being moral, fortitude is courage, temperance is like being able to control yourself and live in moderation. I think those are the great virtues. So that's how you should live. You should live morally, you should live wisely, you should have courage, and you should have moderation. And you should always be virtuous, right? So you should be aware of what your powers are and live accordingly. And you should not be kind of calling attention to yourself. You shouldn't kind of be wanting lots of attention. Rather, you just live a sort of modest life. So, and it should always be rational. Then there's judging others. So at least some of these philosophers, and I think we're still really talking about Epictetus, he says, don't judge other people. Don't think they're bad. Other people just sort of make mistakes. So if they do something which is wrong, then they're the ones who are harmed because they're the ones who made a mistake. So long as you don't let their mistake and their action affect you or affect your mind, then you'll be fine. So don't get too upset by other people. So you should they think basically everybody should live like a philosopher. Just be very stoic, not get upset by the stuff that's going on around you. And try and be as rational as possible. So now it's reasonably easy to see the kind of some differences with the Epicureans. So the Epicureans don't really believe in morality, whereas the Stoics believe morality is the most important thing. They think that living a moral life will make you happy, but the reason to do it is not because it makes you happy, rather because it's important in itself. They certainly don't believe in like separating yourself from society. They think you should be totally involved. If you're living a rational life, you have to kind of live the life of the whole community. One interesting debate between the Epicureans and the Stoics is about friendship. So both of them think that friendship is important. The Stoics say, well, friendship is important to make you happy. So the Epicureans say it's important to make you happy. The Stoics say that if the only reason why you have a friend is because it makes you happy, then that's not a real friendship. You're just being selfish. You don't really love your friend. You're just doing it for yourself. So the Stoics accused the Epicureans of like being fair weather friends. They think their friendships are just shallow. They're not really deep friendships. So the Stoics have this sort of amazing idea that you have total control over yourself under any situations. If you're in jail, if you are ill, you still have control. And so that's what you have control of, your own mental state. And so they say stuff like, you can never be harmed unless you believe you've been harmed. You sort of wonder, were they serious about that? I mean, what if I'm run over by a truck? Wouldn't that be being harmed? If I say, oh, I haven't been harmed, I haven't been harmed, they'd be like, well, you're missing an arm. That's pretty serious. But maybe there are ways to interpret them. It seems sort of not too silly. So looking at a few other Stoics, the Seneca, who was around the same time as Epictetus. He was Spanish. He was a member of the nobility, and he wrote a lot of stuff. He was persecuted by some of the emperors. He had a hard time. He was sent into exile, and eventually Nero sentenced him to suicide. He was one of the wealthiest men in the world. He was sort of halfway between Epicurean and Stoic. But so he was an interesting guy. Marcus Aurelius, already mentioned him. He was later on, 161. He was emperor. He was born in 121, and he was the last of the five good emperors. And his book, The Meditations, sometimes some people have suggested it shouldn't be called the Meditations, rather it should be called the Memoranda. It's basically he's writing stuff down to himself to remember, to try and make himself feel happier. It seemed like Marcus Aurelius, despite being emperor, he was often kind of depressed. So he's trying to cheer himself up with his writings. But his writings, he was a good writer. And he was sort of the closest he ever came to a philosopher king. So he was like, he was a scholar. He didn't want to be emperor. He wanted to kind of go off and read his books, but he ended up being emperor due to kind of sort of accident. So he kind of went on being kind of secular or being a recluse even after he became emperor. So one of the things that Marcus Aurelius came up with is the idea of a wise man being an archer, always trying to get the target. Now, all you have control of is like the bow and the arrow. You can't control exactly where it lands, but you can certainly try. So he has this sort of this weird analogy, weird idea. So he says, if a perfectly wise man saw his child in danger, his own child in danger of drowning, he would try to save the child. Well, of course. But if he failed, he would accept this without feeling distress or pity and without his happiness being diminished. That's a hard thing to imagine, right? You try to save your own child from drowning, you fail, and you don't let it affect your happiness. You think you can have that much self-control. That seems hard to imagine somebody having that much self-control. So he thinks, moral virtue is the only good, wickedness is the only evil, and so a child's death is not an evil, and so you have nothing to regret. I mean, in some ways it seems like a theory which is very much in your head. And maybe it's a good thing to aim at. It just seems a little hard to imagine actually kind of living like that. Right? It seems a little emotionally unrealistic.